Good morning and welcome to Blain's Morning Porridge on January 20th, 2026. 1 year of Trump, the world has changed for the worse. Let's start off with a quote. We didn't force them, they gave us a mandate, and now their little throats are being cut. It's 1 year since Trump took office for the second time, and it's been dramatic, it's been eventful, and it's been destructive and destabilising. The clear winners are Putin and Xi. The losers are the West. But have we now reached peak Trump? Europe is the key. The continent has to wake up to the coming opportunities. For a few short days this week, all eyes will be on Davos. The great and the good will be assembled, looking splendidly casual in their multi-dollar winter gear, which will probably never be worn again. The town is apparently full of AI firms offering unlimited riches from harnessing the power of their products and expertise. However, we all know that's just noise and icing on the cake. What we're really waiting for is to hear Trump say whatever he says when he walks it tomorrow. He is the Basilius and Autocrator of the world. These are the old titles of the emperor in Constantinople, since you were wondering, at least in his own mind. Today is the 1 year anniversary of Trump's second terms. He dominates the flow in a way that nobody in my 40-year-plus career in markets has. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was on the wires yesterday asserting that Europe will fall into line and give the president what he wants. European support for America has evaporated. A new poll published yesterday in Germany shows less than 17% of Europeans still trust America. Ask why. American voters adore Trump, but he shocks and revolts the rest of the world, much as all the great and wannabe dictators have done when they pit their country against everybody else. Last year, I tried not to be overly dramatic when I warned that he was going to be different. When he pushed away the proffered Lincoln Bible and took his oath of office with an empty hand, yep, he did, well, that was symbolic. He has done what he said he would. He has taken revenge. And we all thought that Trump's agenda would be about retribution and the acquisition of wealth and respect, the things that he has craved because of his daddy issues. We thought he'd become a blank page for the libertarian right behind Project 25, which would enable the US to move down a completely different kind of pathway. Instead, however, Trump has become increasingly erratic and attracted towards the power of autocracy. He has betrayed Ukraine, treated America's enemies as equals, and dismissed his nation's friends as beggars at his door. Chaos now follows his every step, and we're beginning to wonder just who is pulling his levers, and more importantly, does anyone have their finger on the stop button? Increasingly, Trump's agenda has become one of disruption, distraction, and destabilization, and I'd even add destruction to that. That is bound to impact markets, and we're looking for clues as who is positioned to benefit. The folk who voted for Trump, the MAGA supporters who believed he would rescue them from being left behind in the poverty left by the swamp, remain as fiercely loyal as ever. But for all that Trump may talk about jobs, stemming inflation, while assuring them affordability is coming, they appear secondary to his own agenda of being at the centre of everything and the exercise of ultimate power. And for all the noise, markets are still acting like nothing much has changed. Oh yes, it has. Wake up. The world is not the one it was. America is a very different place a year after Trump's second inauguration. Few in power talk much about checks and balances anymore. The Senate, Congress, and even the Supreme Court have been effectively silenced and effectively captured. Trump has become exactly what this Constitution sought to avoid, the autocrat who does as he pleases. He moved America into a scary place, triggering flashbacks of 1930s in Europe. Who would have believed that a year ago we would see domestic enemies being removed from the streets by paramilitary thugs wearing the emblems and accoutrements of the state? Whoever thought we'd see political opponents, former state agents, law enforcers, and government employees suffering intimidation and legal threats from having done their jobs? And who expected the rank corruption and opportunism that characterizes this administration? I am told that Washington now is a hub of graft as thousands of Trump Republicans compete in their sycophancy seeking Trump's preferment while playing insider information on Polymarket. It's only 3 weeks since the start of 2026, but the threat of chaotic change has actually accelerated. Had a more enlightened Trump pulled off the Maduro president napping and made normalized demands, then we'd probably be praising his actions as unusual, debatable, but generally a good thing. It probably was. But he didn't stop. In the last few days, he's gone on to ratchet up the disruption of absolutely everything. Let's just run through them. The threat to the independence of the Fed with the investigation of Jay Powell, that left markets reeling. Telling Iranians that help was on its way. Well, no, it wasn't. The Americans were not ready. US carrier groups were in the Caribbean and South Asian seas, and the Qataris said no to using their airbase and airspace. Wasn't it Qatar that gave them the beautiful Bigley gold jumbo jet? Just asking. The threats to Greenland and Denmark have fatally undermined NATO. Breaking the trade agreements with the UK and Europe through the tariff threats means a trade war now looks kind of inevitable. And accepting the real Nobel Prize winner's medal and then the frankly deranged email rant at Norway for not giving him the prize in the first place says much about his mindset. And then, just in case you missed it, there was his invitation to world leaders, including such paragons of truth, justice, and freedom as Russia and Belarus, to join his peace commission for the bargain basement price of $1 billion payable to Trump Industries in Qatar. The world is holding its breath to hear what he'll say at Davos this week. It's supposed to all be about dialogue, but instead we'll be likely treated to yet another stream of narcissistic consciousness of the ugliest possible kind, and a posse of adulterous and frankly mad Trump whisperers, the ones that guide and enable him, who will praise his empty wisdom to the rafters. But the world is waking up. We don't stand in awe of Trump anymore. There will be increasing pushback, and Americans will wonder why they are friendless. There will likely be challenges to trade war escalations in the hope that saner voices in US industry will start to prevail. There will be increasing unrest, crisis, and polarization in US cities, which may be what Trump wants so he can claim the midterms are unsafe, unlikely to be stolen. I mean, if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big one, and tell it often. That's always been Trump's playbook. Now, some say that people in glass houses should not throw stones, but give credit to President Macron of France for refusing the offer to pay Trump to join the Peace Commission. He sees it for what it is. It's Trump's ego wanting to own the United Nations after the insult of a lift breaking down on him last year. Macron has threatened to put EU sanctions on US goods in Europe into play, and if he does it, others will follow. Starmer, God bless his little cotton socks, is one of the few European leaders still seriously arguing for a calmer response. And if Tony Blair had an erg of decency, which may be one of the last unexplored places on the earth, then he would be walking away from Trump and arguing that Palestine and Israel should be represented in solving their common problems, rather than handing it to US property developers. There are multiple things happening in the global economy as a result of Trump, and unless America wakes up, they're all going to be bad outcomes for the USA. The first thing is that we're in a period of hegemonic global change. China now outcompetes the West and is probably more powerful militarily in terms of being able to defeat US power projection, taking out carrier task forces with hypersonic and ballistic missile threats. China also controls global supply chains of critical materials, particularly rare earths. Now, there are plenty of these. It's the processing that's the problem, and it will take at least a decade before the West and the USA can catch up, which means that the massive buildup of AI infrastructure and the power that will be required to make it work is not going to happen if the Chinese decide to fight Trump's fire with fire and sanction the export of rare earths to the West and the USA in particular. And without the expectation that AI is going to drive the US economy, then all the factors that are driving rising US markets are going to tumble. Now, Europe is the key. It is not the problem. If Europe was to act in a Europe-first manner, then we would be in Beijing today doing a deal to secure China's support, trade agreements, supply chain certainty, and opening European and Southeast markets to each other as Europe being part of a new co-prosperity sphere, which would involve inviting the Middle East and Latin America to participate. In return, we would expect China to rein back Russia. And if the Europe and Asia dump US assets, well, where would that end for funding the US $38 trillion deficit? As we're all aware, however, China is deeply divided. It's impossible to herd 27 monkeys, let alone 27 very different nations. But such is the fundamental threat that Trump has opened, it will likely eventually happen. For 10 years, Europe will struggle to evolve into a closer but unified power. In the short term, we may have little choice but to do the deal with China, but in the long term, making the right choices in Europe's interests now will be more positive than trying to anticipate the next moment for Trump. Now, if you're really interested and you want the final word on this, then I'm going to post a link to Randy Newman, the guy who wrote Toy Story songs from way back in 1972. It's a song that he wrote called Political Science, and I'll post the link on the website for the podcast. Anyway, I'm out of time this morning and I got to rush off and do my day job. If you sign up for the Morning Porridge on www.morningporridge.com, you'll get it delivered fresh to your inbox every morning. I'll be back with something else tomorrow, but I suspect it's going to be yet more Trump noise. Thanks very much for your time.